I know, it's amazing not to have switched discs.
Oh. My name's Ian. My project is called Passion Over Provision. I think that exposure to the world has made me a skeptic. The more I discover, the less I find myself agreeing. Now, I don't think I'm a pessimist, and maybe I'm in denial, because a lot of people tell me that I have a lot of issues with how the world works. The vast majority of these, though, stem from an idea that's been germinating in my mind for the past couple of years. That creative potential should take precedence over given opportunity. That the avenues we create for ourselves should be responsible for our success, rather than the ones available to us from birthright, race, gender, nationality, or economic class. I find the relative ease of success for many of us in America has created a hostile environment in other countries. It's instilled the mindset that their lack of opportunity denies them the power to make an impact on the world. In many ways, this view is inaccurate. The world is more and more affected nowadays by grassroots organizations and innovative communities than by international aid groups or million-dollar NGOs. But after seeing the poverty and hopelessness pervading communities in every country we visited over the past 6 months, I began to understand the rationale. America is projected in every community we visited, in every city, in every market, in ads and television shows and malls and restaurants, in the species and variety of crops and visions of development. I heard Lil Wayne and Rihanna playing nearly every day in the townships, and passed stands in Thai markets full of knockoff North Face backpacks and Ray-Bans. I was approached by a beggar in India who didn't want rupees, only American dollars. Everywhere, people wear clothing emblazoned with New York or Los Angeles. People that likely have never been there. The idea of America is projected like some unattainable dream, the sports team everybody unconsciously roots for, but with tickets priced only for the elite. And I wonder if our volunteer work for the communities we visited over the course of this trip contributed to that notion. Was the work we were doing purely beneficial, or was there some lingering corruption trailing in the wake of our outstretched hands? My host brother in India seemed uninterested in any sort of cultural exchange with me, after he found an iPod and camera. I came home almost every day for the first week to find my things strewn about my room, and him sitting on my bed, holding some new item and asking how much it cost. America seemed to him a land of boundless riches, provision, and freedom. And disheartened, he told me he thought there was almost no chance of him ever being able to go there in his lifetime. He was absorbed in the idea of America as a land of material wealth, blindly praising its culture and criticizing India's often in the same breath, yet feeling uninspired to pursue his goal of visiting because, to him, it seemed impossible. In this manner, I believe that the mass appeal of American society fuels the destruction of individual cultures, and by extension, the American traveler functions as a sort of societal conquistador. In the footsteps of the European explorers of the past 500 years, we arrive as strangers in a foreign land, bringing innovation, technology, tokens of opulence and luxury, artifacts from what seems a much easier and more pleasurable life. We no longer seek to destroy the cultures we travel to, but the messages we leave in the minds of the indigenous have a very similar effect. The message we bring through our travel is one that must be very disheartening to the people we visit. They must think, here's an American family, or church group, or gap year program. They come to gawk at our primitive living conditions, to help us utilize the aid money that they gave us, to see what being poor is like for a week, and spend more on souvenirs than we spend feeding ourselves in a month. Many don't try to engage in our culture, some even mock it, and the message they recite all the while is that they want to bring home the lessons they learned from us, to help them better their lives when they return. But what about the lessons that they leave behind, in our country? That the American way of life is what should be aspired for, that we need their help to develop, and as the privileged of the world, it's their responsibility to facilitate our development. That without the jobs they create through their consumerism, without their tourism dollars and financial assistance programs, without their medical aid, without globalization, we will have no hope of becoming successful. And so we sit and look to the developed world for answers. This model of hopelessness isn't exclusive to citizens of developing nations. Discrimination by race, gender, economic status, age, and experience create the same problems in America. I know I felt the societal barriers in my life all the time. I'm too young to be a reliable source of information. I don't have the work experience to function in an organization, nor do I have a college degree. But as a white American man from a wealthy background, there is far less holding me back than the vast majority of people on this planet. I, too, have fallen into the trap of waiting for opportunity to come to me. This realization shocked me as I thought of the process of creating my own potential, working past the assumptions placed on me to make an impact without outside help. If it seems so difficult to me as one of the most privileged people on the planet, how impossible then would it feel to be at the bottom? The first time the pressures of opportunity were strong enough to move me was during winter break of my senior year. I had spent the majority of my time in the public education system, feeling like I didn't belong, that my lessons weren't relevant, and grades at the time had arbitrary value. My teachers were unable to approach lessons in a way that drove my interest, and my fellow students usually had anything but their education on their minds, making class, for the most part, a lecture instead of a discussion. By the time high school began, it already seemed to be purely obligation. My reasons for going involved everything besides the classroom, and quickly I found that these were the passions that I've been looking for: making friends, cracking jokes, food, music, drugs, constantly seeking adventure. I found myself joking to family friends that my favorite classes were my off period and lunch, grinning along with them, then realizing, unsettlingly, that I might have been serious. As the latter half of high school commenced and graduation lurched onto the horizon, I began to realize exactly what was coming for me in the years beyond. Counselors ran through our heads over and over and over that college acceptance potential depended almost entirely on our performance in high school, and society told me that where I went in my career depended almost entirely on where I went to college. As somebody who during childhood had aspirations of going to Harvard, I was a bit worried that my 2.8 GPA would not be up to snuff. My method of fighting the system through inaction would only put me off to admissions counselors as lazy or a poor learner, and continuing this thread throughout my college choices would put me at a disadvantage in a country where overstuffed resume and big shot connections are huge factors in determining career success. I'm smart, I know, and it wouldn't do for me to settle for a university whose name and reputation weren't up to my intellect. So, with head and hopes equally absurdly high, I set my dreams on the University of Chicago, a school that was below Harvard, probably in reputation only. I tried everything I could to fight my way back into the system. I took and retook the SAT and ACT until my scores were as uncharacteristically high as I could get them. I added obscure, mildly impressive things that I had done to my list of accomplishments to make me seem post-academically well-rounded. A middle school swim team I hardly went to, padding the list of club sports I participated in. A couple of week-long Boys and Girls Club volunteer obligations awarding me camp counselor. When the University of Chicago application rolled out, I spent almost 2 months writing my essay, going through dozens of drafts, pulling all-nighters for no reason, waxing Kerouac in my back porch with a joint and 100 jazz records, making absolutely sure that this piece of genius I had crafted was everything the admissions counselors wouldn't expect it to be. I was so sure of my fantastic recovery that I began occupying myself with researching Chicagoan history, estimating the average cost of living in Hyde Park, finding school clubs that fit my interests, learning every obscure music genre that had ever come out of the city, making sure that as soon as I got on campus, I would fit in just as well as the professors. So, you'd imagine my brazen confidence on the way to the mailbox the morning after Christmas of my senior year. I knew that, despite my lack of performance in school, I was surely still an ideal candidate. You might be in your car at the stop sign down the corner and notice an overconfident young boy down the way flipping through late holiday cards with post-Christmas sale notices and coming to a simply marked letter from the University of Chicago. You might even smile along a bit as he splits the envelope with a sliver of plastic he brought from the kitchen on his way out. But likely you'll turn your head, check your phone, roll up your window, peel off onto the highway, find some way of distracting yourself now. As the boy down the way sits amidst the pile of mail he just dropped, head bowed, numb to the squeal of your tires, the distant lazy hum of the highway, the unfriendly chill of December asphalt biting up his calves, blinking into focus again and again the charred shadow of the words burned into his reeling retina. Yeah, I got rejected. What shocked me most about that day was how quickly I got over the whole stage of feeling sorry for myself. Having put the vast majority of my time and effort into this process, after not really trying at anything over the past 4 years, left me full of questions. Did I not do enough outside of school to prove to the admissions counselors that I was competent? Or was the innate privilege that I had squandered what was holding me back? Did they see through my application a wealthy white boy who didn't do enough to set himself apart from the thousands of others like him who came and went each year? Was this the start of a mediocre life, following a mediocre college experience, just like my counselors had warned me? Or was going to a prestigious university not the only way to prove my worth? This was the question I eventually settled on. What is the importance of going to college? My teachers, counselors, and parents had been grilling me for years about the where and when, and it surprised me that only now had I begun to ask, why? The mere fact that I was able to go to an American university was what placed me in the world's elite, and striving to go to a top American university then was equivalent to dabbling over which rock I wanted to perch on at the top of Mount Everest. I'd consumed myself with the need to get to the top without realizing I was already there. Going to college would solidify the position of power and influence I was born into, but surely I could still make a difference without it. Attending my safety school with no plan of what to study, or even attending the University of Chicago with no plan of what to study, suddenly seemed a very poor use of money and time. And thus, I began looking at other options. I assume you all know what ended up. One Monday, as my caretaker auntie and I started down the road from the clinic into the neighborhood beyond, I noticed it a lot quieter than usual. Our Monday route usually took us down the busiest road in town, but only one or two people greeted us from their front yards as we ambled towards the first patient's house. So Auntie lamented our ride our upcoming visits on the way instead. This particular house was owned by an elderly couple that had experienced a lifetime of poorly treated diabetes, and it was their reluctance to take care of themselves that drove Auntie so crazy. It was the moment we hopped onto the cross plank and could glimpse inside that I saw why. A trail of vomit spattered from the kitchen clear across the room to a tattered couch where the usually bright-eyed grandmother lay sobbing and moaning. The curtain that divided the bedroom from the rest of the house lay askew, and through it I saw the grandfather in a similar state. The smell of alcohol clung to my nostrils with each breath I took. Anthea sat and crooned disapprovingly between the two, while I counted out pills on the kitchen table. They were both unmoved, and still moaning when we left. That, Anthea snarled as we started down the road, is the first Monday of the month. Just about every one of my patients is on welfare, and none of them use it the way they're supposed to. They're so sad and sick because they spend their entire stipend on liquor, and they drink because they hate being so sad and sick. No money left to eat, no money left to pay bills, and always feeling too sorry for themselves to listen to what I tell them. Welfare is for helping yourself, not for getting fucking drunk. What I took away from work in South Africa extended the scope of my budding theory far outside the realm of education. Interacting with recipients of government welfare on a personal level completely revolutionized my views on the structure and efficacy of international aid. Billions of dollars flow annually from developed countries to developing ones, coming in the form of medicine and technology, but also largely in living stipends for those who are, or who appear, unable to work. In the community of Cranswick, I found what I believed to be exactly what the model of development through international aid was missing: an understanding of a group mindset, an understanding of individual needs. By grouping all welfare recipients together under one label, a culture is formed. An isolated suburban family suffering due to financial or medical difficulties is likely to recover with help from welfare. But in a community where aid recipients are concentrated, the social stigma that aid fosters is removed, and it becomes not a temporary situation, but a simple reality. Cranswick was a model of aid done wrong for this exact reason. There was no motivation to escape the welfare trap, because it had become a part of everyday life for almost everyone there. One of the assumptions I observe in the conversation surrounding poverty is that many people are poor mostly because they're lazy. Another, more defeatist theory, says that poverty exists largely because of the ineffectiveness of aid programs. If you're born poor and don't receive enough of a support system growing up, it's almost impossible to relieve your situation in adulthood. I find that neither of these arguments have much bearing, because neither one gets to the root of the problem. A support system is something that must be received. Poor people aren't poor because they're lazy. They're poor because they feel they don't have the agency to change their situation. A support system isn't something that must be received. It is something that can very well be created. The problem I see with aid and welfare system is that it generates a culture based around helplessness. A person who finds themselves in a disadvantaged position must work harder than anyone to catch up. And though this seems overbearing, it's rarely impossible. But when a system is in place to make up that person's disadvantage for minimal effort, many people's aspirations of working to catch up go out the window. Thus, the so-called trap of welfare. I don't deny that this welfare trap exists, but I think it has more to do with our culture than with laziness or with the poor implementation of aid. My ruminations on poverty continued into India and Thailand, the heat of college application system. And while juggling work and study, I found my old skepticism returning. What is the point of squabbling over which prestigious college I want to attend this year? I'm fighting to be the 1% of the 1%. If my race, gender, class, and nationality already give me so much power, why am I wasting time scrabbling for more? My answer was one that changed my thinking entirely. The brokenness of the system of welfare I had deconstructed applied to much more than just the issue of poverty. Welfare, I thought, was a system of giving opportunity, of making a disadvantaged person's life easier. But because that opportunity had been given to them, they had learned that not all opportunity must be earned. And that was exactly the issue that was created through the discrimination I had encountered. By being the privileged person I am, I'm given an immense amount of opportunity. I have to work much less to, say, become president than would a poor Hispanic one. I have to work less, even though I never did anything to gain my advantage. I was simply born with it. Because I've grown up with so much opportunity given to me, it becomes much easier for me to assume positions of power. And because I don't have to worry about working hard to become successful, I'm able to focus my energy on things like applications to exalted universities. I can screw off all through high school and still go to a college that someone without my opportunity worked their ass off to get. This realization doesn't make me feel proud, nor does it make me feel guilty. But it delivered a resentment of the culture that fosters and breeds this hierarchy of comfort and instilled a passion to refashion this fundamentally broken construct under which the world is run. I would say the biggest takeaway that the trip gave me is passion. I left for South Africa with a fragmented theory of my own twisted agency, and arrived back in the States knowing that passion is the key to overcoming the unbalanced opportunity that dictates the world's future. I know the person in my place at the University of Chicago understands that, and the effort they made to create opportunity for themselves trumped my vain efforts to cruise onto the top on privilege alone. I know that Auntie understands, as she is more dedicated to making an impact in her community than the South African government, and she being a welfare recipient herself. I know that every person on this planet who finds the dedication to usurp the more privileged and less deserving understands, because they are the key to creating a society run by those with the most passion. Let the world learn to listen to the people who scream the loudest, instead of those who were born with the biggest megaphones. Passion takes precedence over provision. Thank you. Sweet.
That was awesome, you answered them all.
So where are you going to college?
I'm going to Quest University in Canada. It's in Vancouver, about 45 minutes east of Vancouver, in a little town called Squamish. And I liked it because it doesn't follow the traditional college system of taking a bunch of classes. It's more focused on exploration, and it follows the block program. So I just take one class for 3 weeks as opposed to taking a whole bunch of classes. And, I think it's more of a TBB style of education, which I think I benefit from.
We're thinking you challenged us.
First of all, thank you for your speech. It was really great and like super challenging. So I'm wondering what, and I'm just sort of forming this question, so bear with me. I think I agree with you on a lot of points, and I think it's super important to realize our privilege and everything. And I absolutely think that passionate people should be the ones who kind of create and everything. But how do you, with a person who maybe doesn't have as much privilege, and they are super passionate about something, I just wonder if you have any insight into how they can kind of overcome that. They have passion, but maybe they feel that hopelessness and everything. So what can we do as a society to offer them some hope that the passion can take them where they want to be, if that makes any sense at all?
That's actually the question that I'm looking to solve kind of with this as
Okay.
this framework.
Okay.
I think that it is really difficult for, just because the reason that they are unable to find success is just due to the way that our society functions.
Right.
And So as a result, I think that it needs to be a change in the mindset of the people that give them that power, which means the people on top.
So it's a culture change, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to change if I could do anything. Yeah.
All right, Ian, I got one. Wrap my mind around here.
All right.
I thought the way that you wrapped, I thought your talk was excellent, by the way, but I thought the way you wrapped it up very nicely and succinctly about does the privilege of being born with a bigger megaphone trump, the ability to have your opinion or your passionate voice. Do you think that with the advent of technology and a lot of changes in how communication occurs, we've been seeing all of the TBB grad 2014 hashtags. Do you think that gives those with passion, but perhaps not the lucky chromosome club, does it give them the opportunity to have a bigger megaphone? I think of things like Arab Spring and stuff like that, where in the past, those passions and voices would probably be squashed and wouldn't see the light of day. But now maybe a little bit more. Do you think that has an impact, and if so, how much?
Dude, it's totally like a double-edged sword. And it's a double-edged sword because on one hand, I agree. I think that having the technology and having the ability to communicate and share ideas is such a great way to get the word out about functions, about, to make your opinion heard. I mean, there are sites now that, like websites, I know there's one called Upworthy that is really promoting the feminism movement. It's gotten hugely popular over the last year or so. But what I worry, this is something that I observed in the Occupy movement. I spent a little bit of time working there. Is that people get these ideas in their head that something needs to be changed, and then they think that making their voice heard on the internet is all that needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is that while it's so much easier to get the word out to people, the methods of actually creating the change are still old-fashioned, which means going out and being a presence, as opposed to just some internet anomaly.
Yeah.
And so I worry that, I don't know. I mean, I think if any sort of movement is to be hugely successful in the future, it needs to have a strong presence in this world of media that we have, but also it needs to have a huge push of physical activism, which I think is something that our generation is lacking.
So you want to change the world, change culture through an idea, right? That you're going to probably post in a blog. But what would a passion movement look like physically?
That's tasty. I suppose it would be complicated. It's not like you can really go out and march and fight for cultural change because I guess you can, but that's something I need to give a lot of thought to. I think that I don't even know. You can ask me questions like that.
Well, I would say that it sounds like one of the things that you've discovered that's important to you, and I think it's important to a lot of people as well, is passion. You brought that up. Part of the journey is, I think that life can sometimes diminish or take away that passion, no matter what it is, how great it is, just through all the different experiences of life that as adults, we encounter. There's so many, it's not worth naming, but I think that on this journey of passion, and her question too, is related in the sense of to not be dismayed, that to make that or allow that passion to live, or sometimes you have to drive the passion in itself to keep going. And I think the journey that you're talking about, and I encourage you to be on, is sustaining the passion, because we'll run into no's before we run into yeses, typically. And It's how many no's have we got to go through before we get a yes, and to keep our passion alive. And I don't know what you thought about that, and just putting this, presentation together, of what to do when possibly passion runs out or fades away. And, I think all of the students here are very passionate about what they've learned and experienced and going to be change agents and so forth. And then it's a matter of how long can we live with that passion and continue to make the changes that you're so excited about potentially implementing. I guess there wasn't a question in that.
Well, I think what you said actually helps partly to answer Stacy's question. in that the way to foster a physical movement of social change is through kind of demonstrated passion in conjunction with extreme persistence. I think the civil rights movement depended largely on that. I think the Occupy movement, when it started, depended largely on that. I think the reason the Occupy movement failed is because, well, one, there wasn't great leadership, and secondly, there wasn't much persistence. People would try, and they'd give up because the senator wouldn't listen to them, or their protest got impeded or halted, or their buddy went to jail or something. So they say, all right, I'm gonna go back and tweet mad things for the next 3 years, and I'll get over it. But yeah, I think to what you asked, Stacey, any sort of movement to actually create this just really depends on a lifetime of persistence from everybody involved.
I'd say a bit of a challenge for you, and I think an answer to that with passion, and when passion runs out, I think passion in this sense is just like passion in a relationship, that if action is the derivative of passion, that needs to be flipped around, and that actually action, continuous action will be driving passion, will continue to drive feeling. And so I think that's the challenge of how do you constantly put yourself in a position to be taking action, whether or not you're passionate about it at the moment or not. How do you continue to try to apply the lessons you've learned for the year, week in and week out in Vancouver? Good luck.
I think grassroots movements, kind of like what TVP is one of the ways that passion stays alive. You bring in young blood, and I think that young blood helps to motivate even the older, more people who have been doing like the founders, who've been trying to get this program going for the last 8 years, and then every year, it's getting bigger, but it happens on a smaller scale. I think that's one of the ways that it's fueled, is that through a whole bunch of small pockets of minds changing or people getting exposure to what they didn't know before.
I'm curious about people in your privileged peer group or surroundings, as you would define them, how they've responded to you saying, gosh, I have this position of privilege, and who am I to deserve this? Is that provocative to others? Is it something that they join with you in?
Well, this whole kind of idea formed. Well, I'd say before the trip, I mostly pretty much had the idea that I had concerning college, which was that, what's the point of going to college? I don't see, like a degree to me seems like a societal necessity to get a job, but I feel that, experience also can provide that same level of accomplishment or achievement. It's just not recognized. And so that was really what I was trying to get into people's heads. So my friends that were going off to college, so they weren't very receptive. But I think that looking at it from a bigger picture might get a little more people on board. And I'm excited to talk to my friends about it when I get back.
Now, you met a lot of people with a lot of passion, including some painters. You have quite a little art collection going right now from, and some of those people were very sick, and their passion may have ended. Those people, small passions can build. And I think that what you've done is
Thanks, guys.